why did Allah choose Friday, not just as a holy day, not just as a day of gathering, but as the only day linked to Surah Al-Kahf? Ibn Arabi teaches that nothing in divine timing is accidental. Every moment Allah chooses carries a message for the soul. Friday is the day you were created, the day you were sent down, and the day you will be gathered again. And Surah Al-Kahf was placed here, not to be rushed, but to prepare you for deception you cannot see, trials you did not expect, and an ending you cannot avoid. Most people read Surah Al-Kahf as a routine. Few realize it is a weekly realignment of the soul, a protection, a warning, and a mercy, repeated every 7 days. Today, through the wisdom of Ibn Arabi, we will uncover 7 powerful reasons Allah chose Friday for Surah Al-Kahf. Listen carefully, because this surah is not only about the past, it is about what is coming, and it is about you. Ibn Arabi teaches that Friday is not merely a day of rest. It is a day charged with the energy of ruju', returning to Allah. It is the day on which Adam was created, the day on which he was sent down to the earth, and the day on which humanity will be gathered again. Friday holds both the memory of our beginning and the certainty of our end. Surah Al-Kahf mirrors this divine rhythm perfectly. Every story within it is a story of return. The young believers flee from a society that crushes faith, yet Allah returns them to the world with honor. Musa, despite his status as a prophet, is returned to humility when he learns that divine wisdom extends beyond human knowledge. Dhul-Qarnayn is returned from pride in power to responsibility before Allah. Even the parable of the 2 men teaches that wealth without remembrance must eventually return to dust. Ibn Arabi explains that the soul is constantly drifting, pulled by distraction, desire, and fear. Friday acts as a weekly call back to Allah, and Surah Al-Kahf becomes the map for that return. When you recite it on Friday, you are not only remembering stories, you are reminding your heart where it belongs. This is why the surah feels different on this day. It realigns the soul with its origin, teaching you that no matter how far you have wandered, the door of return is always open. Ibn Arabi taught that the greatest danger to the human soul is not sin alone, but being deceived while believing one is safe. Deception is subtle. It dresses itself as success, comfort, intelligence, and control. Friday comes each week to quietly shake these illusions, reminding the heart that this world is not permanent and that accountability is near. Surah Al-Kahf is the surah of unveiled reality. Every narrative inside it strips away false assumptions. The people of the cave appeared weak and defeated, yet Allah honored them. The wealthy man believed his garden was proof of divine favor, yet it became evidence of his delusion. Musa assumed his knowledge was complete, only to discover how limited human understanding truly is. Even Dhul-Qarnayn, a ruler with unmatched authority, is shown that power is not ownership, but a trust. Ibn Arabi explains that Friday is a day when veils thin and truth becomes easier to recognize. When Surah Al-Kahf is recited on this day, it does more than inform the mind. It recalibrates perception. It teaches the heart how to distinguish between what appears powerful and what is truly supported by Allah. This is why the surah protects from the trial of Dajjal, the greatest deceiver. It trains the believer weekly to recognize illusion before it becomes belief, and falsehood before it feels like truth. Ibn Arabi explains that light is not something the eyes see, but something the heart understands. It is clarity after confusion, calm after doubt, and direction after being lost. Friday is the day Allah filled with light, a day when angels descend, prayers are accepted, and hearts become more receptive to remembrance. Surah Al-Kahf was divinely placed on this day because it produces the kind of light the soul desperately needs. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, described it as a light that stretches between 2 Fridays, meaning it does not end when the recitation stops. It continues shaping your decisions, reactions, and inner state throughout the week. Each story in Surah Al-Kahf releases a different form of light. The youth of the cave teach the light of courage in faith. The journey of Musa teaches the light of humility. The story of the gardens teaches the light of detachment from the dunya. Dhul-Qarnayn teaches the light of justice and restraint. Ibn Arabi taught that when divine light enters the heart, confusion loses its grip. Reading Surah Al-Kahf on Friday allows that light to settle deeply, not as information, but as guidance. It quietly illuminates the path ahead, helping the believer walk the coming week with insight rather than fear. Ibn Arabi teaches that trials are not accidents in a believer's life. They are intentional moments of training, carefully placed by Allah to refine the soul. What makes trials destructive is not their intensity, but encountering them unprepared. This is why Friday exists as a weekly pause before life resumes its pressure. It is a moment of spiritual readiness, a time when the heart is reminded that difficulty is not abandonment, but design. Surah Al-Kahf is unique because it does not simply speak about trials. It teaches the correct posture toward them. Every major story in the surah is centered on a test that could have shattered faith if met incorrectly. The youth of the cave faced a trial of belief in a hostile society. Their survival came not from confrontation, but from knowing when to withdraw and trust Allah. This teaches the believer that sometimes strength is found in stepping away, not standing louder. Musa's journey with Khidr is a lesson in the trial of knowledge. Musa experienced confusion, frustration, and apparent injustice, yet Ibn Arabi explains that this was the training of patience in the presence of divine wisdom. Not every trial will make sense when it happens. Some clarity only arrives after surrender replaces resistance. The story of the two gardens teaches the trial of wealth. Comfort can be more dangerous than hardship because it slowly convinces the heart that it is secure without Allah. When the garden was destroyed, the loss was not punishment, it was awakening. Ibn Arabi says trials often arrive to return the heart before it drifts too far. Dhul-Qarnayn represents the trial of authority. Despite immense power, he never claimed ownership. He recognized that strength belongs to Allah alone. This teaches that leadership, influence, and success are all tests of humility. Friday prepares the soul to face these realities, and Surah Al-Kahf becomes the manual. Reading it weekly conditions the heart to expect trials without panic, to endure hardship without despair, and to meet ease without arrogance. It reminds the believer that every test carries guidance for those who approach it with trust. Ibn Arabi teaches that one of the greatest hidden crises of the human soul is losing its center. A heart without a center does not rest. It moves constantly from worry to desire, from hope to fear, from ambition to exhaustion. Even acts of worship can become rushed and distracted when the heart no longer knows where to settle. This condition does not appear suddenly. It develops slowly as the dunya fills more space than remembrance. Friday was divinely appointed to heal this at the level of the Ummah. It interrupts the rhythm of worldly life and forces a collective pause. No matter one's status, wealth, or occupation, everyone stands shoulder to shoulder, facing one direction, listening to one reminder. Ibn Arabi explains that this outward alignment has a deep inward effect. When the body submits to divine order, the heart begins to follow. Surah Al-Kahf performs this centering within the inner world of the believer. It gathers the heart's scattered concerns and reorganizes them around eternal truths. The surah does not deny the realities of life, power, wealth, knowledge, society, but it places each in its proper position, preventing any one of them from becoming the heart's center. The youth of the cave teach the heart to center itself on faith rather than approval. They withdrew not out of weakness, but out of clarity, choosing Allah over belonging. Musa's journey with Khidr recenters the heart on humility, showing that certainty can be more dangerous than ignorance when it leads to arrogance. The story of the two gardens pulls the heart away from attachment to possessions and recenters it on gratitude and dependence upon Allah. Dhul-Qarnayn demonstrates that even immense authority must revolve around justice and accountability, not ego. Ibn Arabi emphasizes that a centered heart is protected from panic, envy, and despair. When Allah becomes the axis around which life turns, events no longer shake the soul in the same way. Loss does not destroy it. Success does not intoxicate it. Confusion does not paralyze it. This is why Surah Al-Kahf belongs to Friday. The day centers the Ummah outwardly, while the surah centers the heart inwardly. Together, they restore balance, calm the inner chaos, and return the believer to a state of spiritual stability, where life is lived from remembrance rather than reaction. Ibn Arabi taught that the relationship between the servant and Allah is not casual or accidental. It is built upon a covenant, a sacred agreement made long before our bodies existed. When Allah asked, "Am I not your Lord?" and the souls replied, "Yes," a bond was established that would define the meaning of human life. Every act of worship, every moment of remembrance is either a return to that covenant or a drift away from it. Friday carries the weight of this original agreement. It is the day of creation, the day of gathering, and the day upon which the final return will occur. Ibn Arabi explains that Friday serves as a weekly reminder that the covenant is still active. It is not a memory of the past. It is a living responsibility in the present. The call to Jumu'ah is not merely an invitation to prayer. It is a call back to loyalty, sincerity, and submission. Surah Al-Kahf was placed on this day because it speaks directly to what happens when the covenant is honored, neglected, or betrayed. Each narrative within the surah exposes a different way the human being interacts with this divine agreement. The youth of the cave honored the covenant by choosing Allah over safety, society, and comfort. Their loyalty appeared to cost them everything, yet Allah preserved them, proving that faithfulness to the covenant never results in true loss. Ibn Arabi notes that when the servant prioritizes Allah over the world, Allah safeguards what truly matters. The story of Musa and Khidr reveals another dimension of the covenant: trust. Musa's repeated questions reflect the human struggle to accept divine wisdom when it conflicts with limited understanding. Ibn Arabi explains that the covenant is not fulfilled through knowledge alone, but through surrender. When the servant trusts Allah even in confusion, the covenant is strengthened. The parable of the two gardens illustrates how the covenant weakens when gratitude fades. The wealthy man did not deny Allah outright. He simply lived as though Allah was unnecessary. Ibn Arabi warns that this is one of the most subtle forms of betrayal, forgetting dependence while enjoying blessing. The destruction of the garden was not revenge. It was a reminder, a painful call back to remembrance before the heart hardened completely. Dhul-Qarnayn represents the covenant in the context of power and authority. Despite his strength, he repeatedly acknowledged that all ability comes from Allah. He did not claim ownership over his success. Ibn Arabi explains that leadership and influence test the covenant more severely than hardship, because pride quietly replaces reliance. Friday gives the believer a space to renew this bond, and Surah Al-Kahf provides the language of renewal. Reciting it is not simply reading, it is reaffirming allegiance. It is a declaration that faith comes before comfort, trust before control, gratitude before entitlement, and obedience before ego. Ibn Arabi teaches that remembrance is not repetition of words, it is recommitment of the heart. Surah Al-Kahf, read on Friday, becomes a weekly renewal of the soul's promise to Allah. It repairs what is weakened, restores what has been neglected, and realigns the heart with its original purpose. This is why the surah feels heavy with meaning on this day. It speaks to something ancient within the soul. It reminds the believer that life is not random, guidance is not optional, and the covenant is always waiting to be honored again. Ibn Arabi taught that the greatest wisdom is not learning how to live comfortably in the world, but learning how to leave it correctly. Most people avoid thinking about the end because it feels distant or uncomfortable. Yet in reality, the end is the most certain event of all. Friday exists as a weekly reminder of this truth. It is the day on which Adam was created, the day on which he was sent down, and the day on which the final hour will occur. Every Friday quietly whispers to the soul, this journey will end. Surah Al-Kahf was placed on this day because it prepares the heart for that reality without terror, panic, or despair. Ibn Arabi explains that fear of the end only dominates hearts that are unprepared. When the soul is trained, remembrance of the end becomes a source of clarity rather than anxiety. Each story in Surah Al-Kahf is a rehearsal for endings. The youth of the cave experienced the end of their former lives. They left behind family, safety, and familiarity, entering a sleep that resembled death. Yet Allah preserved them, teaching that surrendering to Him is never annihilation, it is protection. Ibn Arabi notes that those who trust Allah at the moment of loss discover that what ends is not their existence, but their illusion of control. The journey of Musa with Khidr teaches preparation for the end of certainty. Musa struggled because events did not align with logic or visible justice. Ibn Arabi explains that death itself feels unjust to the ego because it interrupts plans, identities, and expectations. This story trains the soul to accept that divine wisdom often remains hidden until the final unveiling. The servant who learns patience in confusion will meet the unseen world with trust rather than resistance. The parable of the two gardens is one of the clearest lessons about endings. Wealth, beauty, and security appeared permanent to the arrogant man, yet they vanished in a single moment. Ibn Arabi emphasizes that attachment to permanence in a temporary world is the root of spiritual blindness. This story teaches the heart to expect endings without collapse. When the soul understands that nothing here is meant to last, loss no longer feels like injustice. It feels like truth unfolding. Dhul-Qarnayn represents preparation for the end of power. Despite possessing unmatched authority, he repeatedly acknowledged that his strength was temporary and borrowed. Ibn Arabi explains that power is one of the most dangerous distractions from the end because it convinces the ego that it can delay accountability. Dhul-Qarnayn's humility teaches that even the strongest must prepare to stand empty-handed before Allah. Friday intensifies awareness of accountability. It gathers believers, reminds them of resurrection, and points toward the final gathering. Surah Al-Kahf then teaches how to walk toward that future with dignity. It trains the heart to detach without despair, to submit without humiliation, and to trust without needing constant explanation. Ibn Arabi taught that the soul must be trained before confusion arrives. At the end of time, deception will be widespread, truth will feel unfamiliar, and certainty will be shaken. This is why Surah Al-Kahf protects from the trial of Dajjal. It conditions the heart to recognize falsehood even when it appears powerful, convincing, and overwhelming. It teaches that truth does not always shine loudly. Sometimes it survives quietly. Reading Surah Al-Kahf every Friday is a form of spiritual rehearsal. It prepares the believer for small endings, loss, disappointment, confusion, so that the final ending does not come as a shock. Ibn Arabi explains that the one who befriends remembrance of death lives more fully, more sincerely, and more consciously. This is why Friday and Surah Al-Kahf are inseparable. One points relentlessly toward the end, and the other teaches how to arrive there safely. Together, they free the believer from obsession with this world and replace it with readiness for the next. Not readiness through fear, but readiness through understanding, humility, and trust in Allah. In this way, Surah Al-Kahf does not only protect the believer in life, it prepares the soul for the moment when life itself is left behind. Surah Al-Kahf was never meant to be rushed. It was meant to walk with you from one Friday to the next, to protect your faith when the world becomes confusing, to steady your heart when trials arrive without warning, and to remind you that this life is not the destination. Ibn Arabi teaches that the soul survives not by knowing more, but by remembering more deeply. Friday returns every week as mercy. Surah Al-Kahf returns as guidance. Together, they pull the heart back before it drifts too far. If you have been feeling unsettled, If the world has started to feel louder than your faith, this surah is your anchor. Do not read it out of habit. Read it with awareness, with humility, with intention, and let it reshape how you see what is ahead. If this message spoke to your heart, support this work by subscribing to the Emin chapter. Here, we return to timeless wisdom so the soul does not get lost in modern noise. May Allah make Surah Al-Kahf a light between your Fridays and a protection until the day we return to Him.